Hey everyone, welcome to our final YouTube Live of the year.
Up here in the top right-hand corner, I have a Google Spreadsheet or Google Sheet button. So I can click on that. It's going to create a new one. And I wanted to call it the same thing as I have the form called so that I know what spreadsheet it corresponds with. And it'll have responses at the end of the title. And I'll show you that in just a second. So I'll go ahead and get that created. So here we can see the responses. You can, at the top, you can see the questions that were asked, and then the responses here, as well as a timestamp. So all that information is there. I don't have to ask for what time they put it in. We can also collect email addresses in that, so I wouldn't have to necessarily ask for email addresses as part of that, but it wasn't collected on this specific form, but we'll cover that later in the forms. So one of the fun things here, if we had another question out here, some of these answers would be cut off, and you can see here that these answers are cut off. So I'll go ahead and show you how you can wrap that text so that it's not cut off. I can read it all very easily and clearly. So I'm going to select this column D. Up here is the text wrapping button. So click on that. I want to wrap my text. So now it puts it all in that one column. I'm able to easily see what it is without having to select that specific field and try to figure out what it says. So if I go back to what it used to look like, I would have to click on that cell and then I could see everything it says as opposed to wrapping that text. And now I'm able to see it all there in one fell swoop instead of having to click on it and then read from the formula bar. One of the other nice things about if you're having a form that has a whole lot of responses and that you want to try to remember what are those what are the different columns, you can freeze that top row. Like right now, it looks like the top row is frozen. So if I scroll all the way down, you can see here I'm at row 108, but my first row is frozen. So it stays there no matter where I scroll. The place to find that is under View, and then you choose freeze. And so let's say I don't want to freeze any rows. So now I'm going to unselect that. The big thick gray border goes away. Now when I scroll down, I don't see those top rows. So if I want to freeze them back, I can even select up to 3 or 4 rows, go to freeze, and then freeze 2 rows. So the top 2 are frozen. As I scroll down, those will stay there. You can do the same thing for columns. So if I wanted to freeze column A, I can freeze one column. And so now if I scroll to the right, column A stays there, so I can see what time those people put in that information.
Okay. And let me know if you can't see this, but I'm going to go to a spreadsheet that I partially created earlier just because of the sake of time. So here it is. So it probably doesn't make any sense at this point, but I wanted to do a little bit of cell entry and data entry with you so you could kind of see just working. If you're new to working with spreadsheets, this is what it would look like. So let's say I want to make a spreadsheet of a very simple budget. Actually, you know what? Let's do that next. I wanted to show you something first. Sorry about that. Okay, so just disregard all the crazy cell entries there, and we're going to start in cell B1, and I'm going to type in January. And I know many of you are going to love this feature. You are probably used to creating spreadsheets or at least looking at them with all of your data teams and that kind of thing. Okay, in cell C1, I'm going to type in February, so hopefully you guys can see that. Now, to select a cell, you just click on it, right? But if I want to select a range, I just click in the middle of that cell and drag over. So you can kind of see the bright one is the one that's where I clicked first. And if I wanted to start typing, it would go right in that cell. I do not want to type that. Okay, so I am going to highlight January and February. So I just click and drag across those. You can see they're selected with the shading. Now, if you notice, look carefully in the bottom right-hand corner of the selected range, there is a little blue box. If I hover my mouse on that, there's a very thin, small crosshairs. I hope you guys can see it between the C and the D columns. I'm going to do that again. When you get that, it's going to activate a feature called autofill. So watch carefully as I drag across. Okay, I know you guys are going ooh and ah at your different locations. It will fill in the data for you. There's certain series kind of built into Google Sheets. And if you enter two cells next to each other, and it can be sideways or down. I'm going to do one. Let's just say I'm going to come over to column H and type in a 5. And then below that in row 7, I'm going to type in a 10. I can do the same thing with this. Now, this is obviously numeric. So I have the 5 and the 10. What do you guys think it's going to do? Feel free to chat about it. I am going to use that autofill handle, drag down. You can kind of see where it's going to land with the dotted range there. And voila, it is counting by 5s for me. So an example of how I used this recently, I needed a spreadsheet that had dates of every Tuesday for the next few months. And I was building a little schedule for my team. And honestly, I just had to fill in 2 cells. These boxes that you see on a spreadsheet are called cells, and fill in. And I used that same feature, the autofill feature, to complete my row. I think it was a list, so it was a column of dates. So very, very helpful. I'm actually going to undo that just to kind of clean up my spreadsheet a little bit. Okay, so this is the data I want. Now I'm going to finish what I've started earlier with my budget. So let's pretend I want to capture some expenditures that I had this year. So I'm going to quickly enter that in. And if you're new to spreadsheets or if you're new to Google Sheets, very simple to just type in your data there, press enter or return. In fact, I'm pressing tab to go to the right. Okay, so let's finish up with some numbers there. Now I'm ready to total the supplies category. So I want to bring up the idea of using a very simple basic formula. So the way to activate a formula in Google Sheets, very similar to Excel, if any of you have used that in the past. If not, that's okay. You press your equals sign on your keyboard. So that is going to kind of activate that feature. Now when I do, I'm going to use things called cell references. And I always laugh and think about, I don't know how many of you have played the game Battleship. Remember the rows and the columns? Well, that's what you do here. I'm going to click on B2. B2 is where this 40 lives. The cell reference for that 40 is B2, and you can kind of see it notated here. The orange is the cell reference, the blue is the data. And then I'm going to add that with the plus sign. So I'm just typing that in. I know you guys can't see me, but on my keyboard. And I want to add C2. So I'm going to click on it and then press the plus sign on my keyboard. I'm going to click D2. Now I could type in D2. I could also do it that way. And then add the addition sign. And then I'm going to click on my E2. Now it's kind of showing me in a beautiful color, must be the theme, Erin, for today, but it's showing me that this orange cell reference is referring to this orange cell here, and so forth and so on. Now I want to warn you, whenever you have that function or that formula going on with the equal sign and it's kind of in, I call it formula mode, you don't want to start clicking around in your cells because it will mess you up. So right now I'm just going to press enter, and there is the answer. And I know you guys are extremely excited about this, right? So feel free to chat about it. But the reason I love doing it that way with cell references, if February, let's say, was wrong and I really spent $25 that year, that month, if I change that to 25 and press enter, you guys watch the total, the 150. The 150 changes automatically. So you don't want to use numbers, you want to use cell references. Now, you might be thinking, wow, that's awesome, but what if I had a row of 200 numbers to add up or 400 columns? Yes, you're exactly right. That would take forever. So I'm going to delete that. And by the way, before I delete it, notice the 155 totals here, but the formula bar serves a very important function. It shows us what's going on behind the scenes. So I'm going to press delete, and both of those will go away. And this time I'm going to show you probably a little bit easier way that you're going to want to do it. I'm going to come over to the right side of the Sheets toolbar and use the Functions tool. In this case, and there's over 400 functions. So obviously today we're not going to go over all of those. We're going to just try to do two, but they're probably the most commonly used, the sum and the average. So let's start with sum. And it's going to do the same thing we just did, but just a little bit faster. So it's asking me, and this is the way it just does it in spreadsheets, equals sum means I want you to sum up a range of numbers. So we're going to drag across the range. So I just clicked my mouse, held down, let go, and it puts B2 through E2 in there. And I don't have to do anything else. Google Sheets puts the closed parentheses for me. So I'm just going to press enter. And there's my answer. Very cool. Very cool. Now, let's try that with average. I'm going to click where the cell, where I want the answer to live, the cell in which I want the answer to live. So in G2, and I'm going to go back to functions. And this time I'm going to select average. And I wish you guys were here with me, or I would make y'all tell me what I'm supposed to do next. I know you guys know. I'm supposed to drag across the range. So B2 through F2, let go of my mouse. Again, I could have just typed that in, B2 colon F2. The more you work with these functions, the more proficient you'll be with typing them in and using kind of the syntax that Google Sheets uses. So I'm going to press enter, and there's my answer. Now, I have the total for supplies and I have the average for supplies, but I don't have that same thing for technology, which is in this next row. And I'm sorry, I already had that entered earlier just for time's sake. Well, do you remember what we did with autofill earlier? We were able to create those series of data with months and with the 5 and the 10. Okay, so you can use that same feature, autofill, but kind of in a different way. It's going to take what's in this cell and this function, this formula up here, and make the adjustment to the next row. So watch what happens. It's kind of like magic. It's like your magic button. Okay, I'm going to drag from that little autofill handle down. In this case, I'm only doing one row, but you could do multiple. And voila, there it is.